Okay, ready to dive into the art world, but not in the usual way. We're talking about art as a target, not just for beauty, but for the status and the wealth it represents.
Interesting.
Our subject today, Margaret Wallace,
I've had that name.
a woman in 19th century London who defied all expectations. Not with a paintbrush, though, by
Oh,
stealing masterpieces.
well, okay, a thief. That's a twist.
But she wasn't your typical thief, right?
No, not really. Most thieves are driven by pure profit. Money, money, money. But Margaret was different. There's evidence suggesting she had a deep appreciation for art. She might have even recognized the value of pieces, like, way before the so-called experts did.
So instead of creating art, she was curating her own collection, illegally, of course.
Mm.
Kind of makes you wonder, are there any modern-day Margarets out there today? Or is the art world just too savvy now for that kind of thing?
That's a good question. It's a different world now. The art market is just, well, it's a beast. But you know what? Human ingenuity, it always finds a way.
Right? People are clever. So to really get into Margaret's story, to understand her, we need to journey back, way back to Paris at the turn of the century.
Oh, Paris.
Paris, the city of likes romance.
And a perfect hunting ground for an art thief.
Okay, so why Paris? What made it so ideal for someone like Margaret?
Well, think about it. Paris at that time, it was experiencing this huge explosion of art and culture, just everywhere. Museums, galleries, wealthy collectors, everywhere you looked. It was like a target-rich environment for someone like Margaret.
A buffet for an art thief. And Paris had well, a less glamorous side, too.
Oh, absolutely.
But-
You have to remember, crime was rampant back then. Pickpockets, espionage, you name it. It was all happening. That level of chaos, that energy, it could easily mask someone like Margaret's operations.
So it provided cover.
Yeah, like trying to find a specific grain of sand on a beach.
Impossible. Okay, let's jump into a specific scene. It's 1893. We're at a high society charity event. At the Louvre, no less. Guests are mingling, there's music playing, everyone's distracted. What happens next?
Well, this is where things get interesting. Right in the middle of all that opulence and distraction, a priceless Renaissance painting, The Hidden Muse, vanishes. Gone. Poof.
Hold on, so this isn't just some petty theft, right? We're talking about a major heist. Right in the heart of the Louvre.
Exactly. And it's the audacity of it all that really gets you. The Hidden Muse was, people thought it was worth a king's ransom. This was planned, meticulously planned. This wasn't some random act.
So how did she do it? Did she, rappel from the ceiling, Mission Impossible style?
Not quite, but she might as well have. Margaret, she disguised herself as a noblewoman, used forged documents to get in. And that alone, in that time, that was incredible. But get this, she also had inside connections, so she was using social engineering, too. Pretty impressive.
Wow, talk about playing a high-stakes game.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone around her, just pawns. Did anyone even suspect her?
Here's the crazy part. They never caught her. Margaret and the Hidden Muse vanished. Just disappeared, leaving behind a lot of confused authorities and a mountain of unanswered questions.
So the painting, this masterpiece, it's still out there somewhere. A ghost from the Renaissance? Hidden from the world? This is like a detective novel.
It really is, and it's just one of the many mysteries surrounding Margaret Wallace. Did she have accomplices? Where did she go after the heist? Switzerland? London? Or did she just slip back into Parisian society? It's like she disappeared just as expertly as she stole the painting.
She was a master of illusion then. A phantom thief.
You could say that?
It really is. It's like the painting itself, it became a hidden muse,
Oh.
inspiring all these theories, all this speculation. But beyond the heist itself, the missing masterpiece, there's Margaret herself. Here's a woman who, back then, women were expected to be seen and not heard, and she made this thunderous statement.
Oh, absolutely. Her story, it goes beyond just the crime itself. This is a woman who completely defied societal expectations. And back then, women had so few opportunities. And she created her own path, her own way, a path that led her to the heart of the art world, even if it was, let's say, through a side door.
It's like she was playing a different game altogether. Like while society was trying to put her in a box, she was busy outsmarting the art world's elite. Makes you wonder, was she trying to make a statement? Was it more than just the thrill of the heist?
That's the beauty of her story. It really it forces us to think beyond the surface, to grapple with her motivations. Was she just this criminal mastermind driven by greed, ambition, or was she something more? A visionary, a woman ahead of her time who saw art as something to be experienced, appreciated, even if it meant bending the rules a little, a lot.
Bending the rules, yeah. It's interesting you say that about her being a visionary. She was a criminal. definitely. But maybe there's a part of her that wanted to challenge the very idea of ownership
Yeah,
and value when it comes to art.
exactly. And that's what makes her legacy so compelling, because it sparks a debate about the nature of art itself. Who gets to decide its value? Who gets to possess it? Her actions, they force us to think about these questions, really confront them.
Yeah. Like she's holding a mirror up to the art world,
Yeah.
showing its vulnerabilities, its contradictions. But let's go back to the heist for a second.
Yeah.
You mentioned before she had those inside connections.
Mhm.
What do we know about those? Was she part of some secret society?
Yeah.
An underground network?
Well, unfortunately, the historical record on that, it's pretty murky. Some people, they think maybe she had ties to other art thieves, maybe even disgruntled art dealers who saw her as a way to, get back at the establishment.
So maybe this wasn't a solo act after all. Maybe she was part of something bigger. A network of people who shared her passion for art and her disregard for the rules. That adds a whole other layer to the story.
Oh, for sure. It also speaks to the power of networks. Even back then, in the 19th century, information, resources, connections, they were valuable then, just as they are now.
It makes you think about the hidden forces that shape history.
Yeah.
The people who operate in the shadows, pulling strings, influencing events. Maybe Margaret's story is just a glimpse into that world. A reminder that there's always more going on beneath the surface, always something more to discover. It's fascinating how Margaret's story just changes how we see women in history. We always hear about, the artists, the collectors, the people who paid for it all. But what about those women, the ones who worked in the shadows, who defied everything people expected and left their mark in, well, unconventional ways?
Yeah, and Margaret, she really disrupts those old stories. She wasn't happy just watching the art world. She wanted to be in it, to really participate. And she did. She used her intelligence, her wit, her audacity to carve out her own space.
She refused to let society tell her what she could be passionate about, what her ambitions should be. It really makes you wonder how many other Margaret Wallaces are out there, hidden in the footnotes of history books, women who broke the mold, challenged the status quo. And their stories, they're just waiting to be discovered.
That's the power of these hidden stories. They change how we see the past. They help us see how complex history really is, but through a different lens. Margaret, her story, it reminds us that history isn't just about big battles and politics. It's about individual stories of courage and cleverness in pursuing your passions.
It really does make you think. Okay, so if Margaret were alive today, what do you think she'd be doing? Would she be a curator or a collector, an art critic? Or would she still be working in the shadows, this master thief with an eye for beautiful things and a knack for staying one step ahead?
That's a great question. Maybe she'd be running some online art marketplace, like a digital Robin Hood, redistributing masterpieces through the dark web or something. Or maybe she'd use all her knowledge to expose forgeries, protecting the art world, making sure it's all on the up and up.
The possibilities, they're endless. But one thing's for sure. Margaret Wallace. Her story reminds us that sometimes the most interesting stories are the ones hidden beneath the surface, just waiting for someone to find them, to examine them, to share them. So if you were Margaret, where would you hide a stolen masterpiece? What would your legacy be? Something to think about. We've had a great time this deep dive into the life and crimes of Margaret Wallace, the great thief of Paris.